welcome back to my channel, Manga Hoarder. My name is Laura, and today I'm going to show you my library haul. I check out a lot of books from the library. I don't normally share them, and over the last year I've done quite a lot less, and then when January hit I decided that I was going to start going back to sort of my old routine of checking out every single new comic book and graphic novel that the public library bought. My public library buys a lot of comics and graphic novels, so I end up checking out quite a lot of books. Normally I will check them out, immediately return the ones I'm not interested in, and only take the ones home that I am. And over time that sort of accumulates. Right now, because of lockdown, we aren't able to return our books as they expire, so right now I have quite a lot of books just sitting here, and now I have quite a lot of time to read them too, so I might get through more than just the 10% that I normally read. A little plug for the library, you know, if you are stuck at home, they do have digital resources. You can borrow digital comics. I know that Viz and Tokyo Pop and at least Digital Manga are all available on OverDrive. Your library will have different titles, but you can borrow comics on their OverDrive or Libby app. I know that you can borrow comics in the Hoopla app if your library has it. Mine doesn't. And Hoopla has quite a lot of different things, a lot of superhero comics. I know that they have a lot of Archie comics. And another place that you can go at your library is a resource called RBDigital. That's one that normally circulates things like magazines, but they do also have a selection of comics. It's not as huge, and if your library has that, that's another good place. So there's various different resources. All libraries will be different. Mine is different as well, but definitely dig around because you might actually find something. I even found there's an app or a resource called Freegal Music, which actually had like old superhero radio plays on it. So, you know, I've been finding quite a lot of different things that you can do digitally through your library, even if you can't actually go out or go anywhere, and you probably should stay home as much as possible, but still support your library by using them. That's a really good thing. So anyway, I'm just going to go through all of my books that I got here in front of me. There is a lot. I don't know what most of them are about because I genuinely place holds on absolutely every single title. Without any prejudice. It's only afterwards that I'm just like, this one looks good, this one doesn't look good. So these are all the ones that looked good enough to bring home. If I read them, great. If I don't, it's fine. Anyway, I will have a lot to do. You know, I already have a ton of comics to read. I have never, you know, read all the books in my collection. We are overflowing. We have completely run out of shelves. So we're stacking, and now we're in the stacking mode. But also at the moment shopping has gone down to zero. So will be a while before we actually pick up some new comics. Anyway, all of that introduction aside, I'm just going to show you what I got. I'm going to start off with this. This is, does it have my name on here? I don't think so. This is an interlibrary loan, so you can actually borrow, certain libraries will have an agreement where you can borrow from other library systems. So this one comes from the University of Lethbridge, so not my public library. And I have borrowed this book. It's called Collecting an Unruly Passion, Psychological Perspectives by Werner Moonsterberger. I'm not going to know how to pronounce that, but I will read it. I have read quite a bit of it already, and it had expired, so I was glad to hear that I could actually keep it out longer, because these are ones you can't renew. And this is one of the, I think, the most popular books on the topic, and I think probably one of the most quoted books on the topic of collecting, and it kind of takes on this idea of why you collect, and usually it's because of some past trauma. So it's basically saying that people who are collectors are emotionally damaged. And I don't know if that's always true. I know that certainly collecting can kind of give you a piece of yourself, or it can, you know, give you some sort of a comfort. but I don't think that I amass a lot of comics because of some past trauma. So I'm not entirely sure that this is quite on point, but it certainly is a one way or one reason that people collect. Collecting as a topic in general is something that I'm interested in. It's something that I read about actually all the time. I read quite a lot of academic journals and books and things, and I don't actually ever talk about it. My education is in art history and museology, so the idea of collecting is something that I'm fascinated by. And then as a collector myself, it takes on a different perspective. So I really like reading books like this. I'm not sure it's an interesting book. I'm not sure that I agree with most of it though. But there's lots of other books on the subject. And maybe one day I'll actually talk about collecting and ideas of collecting and what it means and stuff like that. What do we got here? A couple of books that were expired, haven't gotten to them yet, and I'm really glad I can now because they were ones that I've just holding off, and even though they're expired, I was holding on to them. This one is The Cursed Hermit. There you go. This is by Chris Burton and Alex Forbes. They're Canadian, and I believe they're in Nova Scotia. They're on the East Coast, I think. I can't remember exactly where they are. But anyway, this is kind of like, as it actually looks like, if you're at all familiar with children's fiction, this looks like a Nancy Drew story. It kind of is a grown-up version of a Nancy Drew story, with a little bit of a fantastical touch. I have read the first volume in this series, really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to checking this one out. I think it's just going to be kind of odd and fun and nostalgic at the same time. Yeah, I really highly recommend checking this out if you haven't tried this one before. The next one is actually a title that I requested the library order and I haven't read yet, so that's good. I'm going to get a chance to do that now. This one is To the Heart of the Storm. This is a Will Eisner title. Will Eisner is known for, or at least given the credit of creating the first graphic novel. His illustrations are just absolutely stunning. I love the way that he lays out panel and dialogue, and his stories are emotional and just beautifully illustrated. They're just gorgeous. I do think that this is a wartime story, and as you know, war is not my favorite topic, but I think this one will be okay. It's more about, I think, people back home. Kind of looks like. It doesn't look like it's actually about the battles themselves. I always am emotionally affected by his stories, and I think he's absolutely spectacular, so I'm really excited to read this one. More along the same lines, this one is Grass. This is by Kumsuk Gendry Kim, and I apologize, I probably should have looked up names before I started filming this. I just wanted to get it going. This is a Korean comic, and it's about comfort women, I think mostly during World War II. I am not entirely sure the span of it, maybe just, during Japanese occupation. But it is, I think, going to be a hard title to read, and I think a really important title to read. I don't think there's a lot of writing that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's a ton of writing, but particularly in comics, I don't know a lot of writing about the comfort women. So this is going to be a good title. Drawn and Quarterly publisher. Published, and this is translated, let's see, translated by Janet Hong. So anyway, I have heard really good things. I've seen this on a lot of best of lists lately, so I'm looking forward to reading this. I'm looking forward to reading it, I'm just not looking forward to feeling feelings. I don't know anything about this title, but it looked kind of interesting. This is The Strange Ones by Jeremy Jesse. It kind of looks about two kind of odd teenagers. They're just not really good at being around other people, but they find each other, and then something tragic happens to one of them, and the other one has to deal with that. I think that's what this is. It kind of looked like from my initial flip through, but the art, I don't know. Looks like that. I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to look like it's trying too hard. trying to be emotional. We will see. We will see. That's my prejudgment on something I haven't read yet. This one I'm really excited about. I think it's beautiful. This is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Macquarie. Yeah, I think it's Macquarie. I think that this is a famous British author, but I don't know them, or British illustrator, but the artwork in it is just beautiful. And it does look like it's going to be emotional, kind of sweet and emotional. So, Omakase, cartoonist for The Spectator and book illustrator for Oxford University Press. Collaborated with Richard Curtis for comic relief and Nelson Mandela on a lithograph project, the Unity series. Lived and painted in South Africa, Southern Africa, and New Orleans, and co-runs a social enterprise, Mama Bushi, in Zambia, which helps families of low and no income to become beekeepers. Who lives in London. Oh, well, that's nice. Anyway, there's quite a lot of famous Brits who wrote blurbs for it on the back, so that was also kind of interesting to me. That's why I assumed it was a famous British author. But it looks pretty. Oh, this one I am familiar with. I don't know what this title is going to be, but I really, really love this author. This is Michael DeForge. This one's called Familiar Face. He writes really kind of surreal, strange stories, and I'm not always confident I know what the message is, but he wrote one, I can't remember what it's called at the moment, that I really liked. Anyway, I like all of his books as I read them. They're just weird and strange, and they have a strange message, and I'm not sure if they're trying to parallel what's going on in the real world or if they just have a strange message for a strange world. They're fun, though. And Michael DeForge is Canadian. This is also by Canadian author Guy Delis. This is The Handbook of Lazy Parenting. This is in a series of bad parenting books, and they're just sort of like, they read kind of like web comics or newspaper comics about a dad and his kids and how he is a bad parent, and they are really, really funny, really, really sweet and charming. Highly recommend checking them out. This one is also published by Drawn and Quarterly. This one, a colleague of mine actually told me she was enjoying, so I checked it out. This one is Sleepless by Sarah Vaughan, Leila Del Duca, Elisa Sala, and Darren Bennett. I know absolutely nothing about it except for that she was reading it and said she liked it. I'm assuming it has something to do with maybe Sleeping Beauty? Not Sleeping Beauty? Some sort of a royal story, royalty, fantasy. We will see. The next title I have is a huge one. This one is Lupus by Frederick Peters. I have read other works by Peters, and I can't think of what they're called. Is Paulette one of them, or is that Boilet? I can't really remember. I do know, though, that I have enjoyed his books before. His artwork looks like this. This is a huge one. This is supposed to be sort of a science fiction story, kind of Odyssey type telling, where a man is wandering from planet to planet, haunted by his past, and orbiting around a woman. So it kind of is really floppy, almost like newsprint, so I'm gonna, like, it's super floppy. That's kind of enjoyable. I don't know anything about it. It's got good reviews. There's a few people on the back here that I'm familiar with that have given it great reviews. Bart Beatty, for one, I'm familiar with. That's all I know. The next title I'm really excited about, and I was actually just going to flat out buy it, but then my library did, and I didn't have the funds for it at the moment, so I probably will still buy it at the time, at a later date, if I can find it in the future when I can buy things again. And that is I Know What I Am, The Life and Times of Artemisia Gentileschi by Gina Siciliano. This is the story of a 17th century painter, female painter. You rarely hear about the female artists, and she was really actually quite significant, and painted really famous painting called the, what is it? Slaying of Holofernes, Beheading of Holofernes. I know it's actually in the front here. Does it say what it is? It doesn't say, but you can actually get, you know what I'm talking about. You've seen this painting. So this is a biography of her life. Very rocky, hard life, particularly as a woman in a man's world, as it always is, isn't it? And anyway, I'm really excited about this. There's also a Kickstarter going for another title that's being translated into English, also telling the story of Artemisia, and I had backed that, which actually I think was announced before this was announced it was getting released, so I was really excited to see that both of these things are happening. I'd like to read both of them. Yeah, I'm excited about that. This is a title that I just keep putting on hold, and I don't know why, because it actually does not look appealing to me at all, but I think it must keep being mentioned somewhere because I keep putting it on hold, and then it'll come in a couple months later and I'm like, why did I put this on hold again? Why? I don't know. So this is Day Tripper by Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba. I think it's a popular title or a famous title or an important title. I know nothing about it, but I really dislike this cover for some reason. And it just looks so bland to me, so I don't know why I keep putting it on hold. I don't know what my memory is of that. This one is a title that got listed in a few best of lists for the year, and actually it's a title that I asked the library to buy, and they did. That's The Weatherman, Volume 1. This one is by Jody Lee Hoop, Nathan Fox, and Dave Stewart. I really love the color of this. Looks like a lot of fun. I think there's a few graphic novels of this title out. That's basically what it looks like. So I thought that would be fun to check out. And then this one also, I think I think this one is just that it's new, and I think I must have just taken it home because it looked big. It looks big. The artwork in it is big. The frames are quite large in it. So anyway, that is Bitter Riot. This is Volume 1, Family Business, by David F. Walker, Chuck Brown, and Stanford Green, creators. Color artist Rico Renzi and Stanford Green, again, and letter Clayton Cowles, and then the cover artist is Stanford Green. Not sure at all what this is about, but just the work, the bold panels, it just feels like a big work. And also the colors in it are quite nice. I know nothing. I got this one, and it's like, you know, magazine thin, even that. This is a Koyama Press title. It's called Constantly by Gigi. I have read something else by this author, and I just really love their very muted palette. It's just really pretty to look at. It feels like reading poetry. That's what these works look like to me. They look like sort of the graphic novel equivalent to poetry. And yeah, I've basically showed you the entire book now because there are so few pages. But they're just really pretty, really muted, quiet, lonely, kind of appropriate for what we're all doing right now, is, you know, staying away from each other. Feels like an appropriate title to read. Probably will take 5 seconds because it's short and there's almost no text. I also picked up Faithless. Again, I don't know anything about it, but it is a bright pink, and bright pink things are things that I take home because I love bright pink. Brian Azzarello and Maria Lovett. That's basically what it's looking like. I don't know anything about it though. Something about magic. I don't know what I don't know what I think about this. I don't know what I expect from this, but I will give it a try. I also picked up another war comic. But this one, another colleague, different colleague of mine said that they were in the middle of reading it. I work with people who read comics, and that's very exciting. They also read, I work with people who read a lot. Actually, everybody I know reads a lot. It's sort of one of those things. I'm in a very weird community. But anyway, a colleague of mine told me, a friend of mine told me to read this one, Once Upon a Time in France. It's also new, by Fabian Nury and Sylvain Vallet. It is a World War II story, and you can really see like the crammed panels very much looks like French comics, just right from the get-go. Yeah, it's definitely going to be more of a kind of a literary title and take some time to actually work through. It's a pretty big book. It doesn't really look like it. It's heavy, but it's dense, and you know the topic is a hard one for me. It's an author that I really like sometimes and also really dislike sometimes, but is their new title, I think, and that's Oh Josephine by Jason. I have liked all of the short books that have been put out by Jason, but I have rarely liked the bigger books by Jason for some reason. This one is a compilation of short stories. There are a couple of stories that are illustrated with the yellow coloring. Most of them are just black and white, and they're mostly just sort of anthropomorphic characters, kind of dogs, I think. But generally are kind of fun. Usually they, say something, they have some sort of a meaning, or are set in history, or they're, they're trying to do a little bit more than just daily life or just entertain. I've enjoyed most of what I've read. Oh, amazing. A superhero comic made it home with me. That one is SpiderMan, The Adventures of Spider-Man. This one is Radioactive. I think Marvel is putting out a bunch of these little stories. It kind of looks like, is it this, the 90s art style? Someone else will know, not me. And I don't know if this is like all in a row. Does it actually say what it is? Oh yeah, 94. It contains material originally published in magazine form as Spider-Man Magazine 94, 1994 1 through 19, Spider-Man Magazine Special 1995 1 and 2, and that's it. So they're just these like really cute little books. There's a couple of them that the library bought. I think I only took one home. There might be more here that I'm not aware of, or maybe there's one in my car. Because there was a couple, I think I sent some of them back, just because I knew I wouldn't read them all. But I do, I know that the 90s superhero comics get a bad rap, but, I was a kid in the 90s, or a young teenager in the 90s, so that's sort of the nostalgic art of comics for me. It's fun. I don't mind. What else we got? This one I know nothing about, but it looks weird, and weird's my favorite. That is the Bulletproof Coffin by Hine and Keynes. Let's see. David Hines and Shaky Kane. So it does have just looks kind of silly. I don't really know if this is famous or popular, because I don't know other comics very well. But it looks like fun, so I'm going to, I think, enjoy reading it, probably. I don't know, it looked kind of silly. Now, I'm glad I did this, because, as you know, I'm hosting a read-along in April, and I wanted to do a little bit of sort of outside reading, just so that I had a little bit more to say about Nausicaa than just sort of my impressions of it. So I did put holds on a couple of different things, and I had some books myself that I will be reading this week, which is great. But I did put holds on a lot of the Studio Ghibli art books, because there are interviews and a lot of other information, and that will help kind of just give a picture of Miyazaki's thought process, I guess. So I did get the Kiki's Delivery Service art book. I got Castle in the Sky, which I love. Princess Mononoke. And then, of course, Nausicaa. And there is an interview about Nausicaa. It's more about the making of the film, of course, but there's good information. It kind of gives you a more robust reading experience. I also got this one. It's kind of like a preteens comic, and it just kind of cracks me up. This one is Go With The Flow by Lily Williams and Karen Schneeman. It's a friendship story, period. So it's a story about periods, which girls really need. And what's great about it, which just made me smile, is that color palette. It's just funny. It's so funny. I love it. So there you go. It's a pretty chunky one too. We will see. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun. And then, what else do I have? Okay, before the manga, such a scattered filmmaker when I'm not a filmmaker, I'm just sitting here. The next one that I have is part of a project that I had for myself that's supposed to begin in March. And I'm not sure how it's going to proceed now that the world has turned. And that is Everything You Know About Art is Wrong. This is by Matt Brown. I had plans to read nonfiction over the year, and one of the things that I really want to be reading is art history. I studied art history in school, but I barely use art history for work. And I only ever got my bachelor's degree, so I never really went very deep or very far with it. So I thought one of the things I would do this year is read a lot of kind of popular art history books, and just sort of enjoy, kind of like recapture my memory of art history, kind of rethink about art history. And so I went on the library website. I placed holds on probably 100 titles, and I had them set to release, because you can suspend your holds. I had them set to release 2 books a month, and then I think I have maybe it's not 100, but 2 books a month, and then about 40 to release in November for Nonfiction November. I really want to be reading nonfiction. I am in such a mood to read nonfiction. I have actually been reading quite a bit of nonfiction, I just don't ever talk about it. And because, for nonfiction, I rarely read a full book, so I never track it on Goodreads. I might read half a book, I might just read the chapters that interest me. I don't normally read popular nonfiction, so I don't ever track it. So you never see, or I never see, how much I've actually read in a year. I really want to be reading this kind of stuff, but now that, the library's closed, now that we have to be really careful. We always had to be careful, but now we're so aware of how careful we have to be. I'm not sure I'm going to be borrowing these books anytime soon. I imagine nobody else is reading them, but I do have this one to get me started. I'm not even sure, because it says Everything You Know About Art is Wrong. It's well, I actually know quite a lot about art, so maybe what I know about art is right, and this is for people who know nothing about art. So I imagine I'm just going to argue with this book, which is fun too. So what's interesting about these is that they all have white spines, which is very weird. The first one I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have 1 through 9 of Ao Haru Ride. This was published by Viz. It's by Iyosaki Saka. This one is translated by Emi Louis Nishikawa. So I did get to the first 9 volumes. This is a title I wasn't really interested in. I know it was really, a lot of people were really excited about it. It was really popular when it got released. But I had read, I can't even remember what the other title is called, her first title, and I wasn't terribly impressed with it, so I wasn't really interested in reading more of the same, which I imagine that's what this is, but because the library had so much of it on order, I can read it all, binge it, don't have to buy it, and if I don't like it, that's great, and if I do like it, I'll just add it to my list, right? It's a good way to save me a little bit of money. The next one, I'm unfortunately missing the middle volume, unless it's downstairs, which I really hope it is, because I really do want to read this, but I am a little bit put off by the art, and that's the reason I haven't picked it up, even though I've heard great things, particularly from Simply G. I know that she talks about this one quite a lot. But that is Land of the Lustrous. This one is by Haruko Ichikawa and translated by Alethea and Athena Nibley, lettering by Evan Hayden. This one has, this is what the art looks like. I believe that these characters are written as like non-binary, non-gendered characters, which is interesting. A lot easier to do, I think, in the Japanese language than it is in English, so I think that's going to be an interesting piece of reading. I also think that they're like gems or something. That's all I know. That's the height of what I know about it. I'm not keen on this art style. It does not appeal to me. And that's every time I've gone, you know, I'm like, oh, I know Simply G loves this one. She has good taste. And then I pick it up and I'm like, I don't like this art. And maybe it'll grow on me. And maybe it'll really work with what the story is. So I'm looking forward to reading it, but I'm glad I don't have to buy it to read it, because that was one of the things that was putting me off to pick it up. And I know a lot of people really love the art. It's just initially that's my impression of it. Next up is 10 volumes of the series Boarding School Juliet. I don't know this title at all, and I've never heard anyone really talking about it. I think it has an anime that was popular-ish, but I really don't know anything about it. It's the cover of volume 1. I see. So it's a, you know, it's a boarding school, or it's a high school type story. As you would expect, but it contains students from 2 rivaling nations, and because they're rivaling nations, they're rivaling students. I guess that's what this is about. It kind of sounds fun. I genuinely don't know anything about it, but I'll read anything. So, and there was so much of it that was on order, so that's good. Plus, you know, 10 volumes, I can just binge through it. Great. And then the last one that I have is the complete series of Erased by Kei Sanbei. This one's published by Yen Press, and they don't usually put their translators in, so let's just see. And I can't remember if I said the translator for the last one, but all the titles as well as translators will be down below. Oh, this one is translation Sheldon Zerka and lettering by Abigail Blackman. This actually I wasn't initially interested in, particularly because I hate the dust jacket on it, which is enough for me to be like, no, I don't want it. It's kind of like a frosted mylar, which just looks like it's going to fall to pieces the second you open the book. And every book that you would see at the store, always the jacket was always damaged, so I thought it was just such a poor choice. I didn't want to buy one that didn't have a nice dust jacket, because I'm like that. But the story sounds kind of interesting, a little bit like The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. It sounds like it's about a character, a manga artist, who keeps reliving moments over and over until he diverts disasters, and I think it's just sort of something that naturally happens. That's what I gather from it. I have heard good things about it. I haven't heard a lot about it though. Yeah, but I am interested in giving it a shot, and now I can do that without any financial burden, which is always a bonus. You know, so if I love it, I can add it to my collection. If I don't love it, I've read it, that's fine. I don't need it in my collection. You know, despite all appearances, I don't buy everything. I do borrow a lot of books from the library, and I'm always excited when they kind of start picking up a lot of manga, because they kind of go through seasons of buying a lot of manga, buying a lot of other kinds of comics, and then not very much, and then all of a sudden there'll be so much, it's overwhelming, can't read it, can't keep up. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. That's what I'm going to be doing for the next week anyway. Hopefully the libraries won't be closed forever, but hopefully everybody's staying safe, staying inside, staying, you know, keeping your distance from people. We're all in this together, but separately. You know, let's just stay separate, stay safe. It's such a dangerous, crazy time, and yeah, I can't even really comprehend. My anxiety is, you know, through the roof, as I'm sure most of you are experiencing. So yeah, hopefully this will pass. you know, it has to pass eventually. We just have to hang tight and read comics alone in our room by ourselves, away from people, which we're already really good at, aren't we? Anyway, I think that's it for today. Let me know what you'll be reading for the next week down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.